sell your house and keep $500,000 tax-free. You've heard that everywhere. TikTok, YouTube, realtors with ring lights, right? But that's the myth. Here's the truth. One rental period, one poorly timed move out, or one LLC filing you did for legal protection can erase the exclusion completely, okay? So today, I'm breaking down what the law actually says and why so many people who swear they qualify absolutely don't. And I'm Jasmine DiLucci. I'm a tax attorney, CPA, and enrolled agent. I got my first tax license as an enrolled agent in high school because I genuinely love tax law, and now I break down what the law actually says, and I live my best life because I get to practice and research tax law 7 days a week. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly when your home sale qualifies for the exclusion and when it doesn't. Okay, I'm going to break down what the law really requires under Section 121, the ownership test, the use test, and the timing rules almost everyone misunderstands, how real-world situations play out. We're talking rentals, vacation homes, LLCs, and the non-qualified use rules that quietly disqualify homeowners every year, and a tax strategy most people overlook, okay? One that lets you lock in the exclusion before you accidentally lose it. People focus so much on the dollar amount that they miss the part that really matters, right? Proving you lived there long enough, recently enough, and in the right way. So this is what Section 121 actually requires and where most people fail without realizing it. So let's clear up the test before the IRS removes the exclusion entirely. Okay, Section 121 says you can exclude the gain from selling your home if you meet two tests. Okay, you owned the home and you used it as your principal residence for at least 2 out of the last 5 years before the sale. That's the ownership test and use test. Simple on paper, a bit messier in real life. Okay, here's where people fail without realizing it. If you lived in your home for 10 years, then moved out and rented it for 4, you're now outside the 5-year window. You fail the use test, which means the exclusion is gone. Now let's talk about how much you can actually exclude. If you're single, the limit is $250,000. If you're married filing joint, it jumps to $500,000. But there's a catch for most couples that they miss. For the $500,000 exclusion, only one spouse needs to meet the ownership test, but both spouses must meet the use test, okay? And that tiny detail is where you can lose the full exclusion. Let me give you an example. You buy a home in your name only. You and your spouse live there together for 2 years. When you sell, you qualify for the full $500,000 exclusion because even though you owned it alone, both of you used it as a principal residence. Now, let's flip the scenario. Okay, you owned the home long before you got married. Your spouse moves in and 6 months later you sell. You meet both tests, but your spouse doesn't. Okay, so you're limited to the $250,000 exclusion, not $500,000 because your spouse hasn't met the 2-year use requirement. Now, understanding the test is the easy part. Okay, the hard part, and the part that catches almost everyone, is what happens when life doesn't follow a clean 2-year plan. Okay, moving out early, renting the home, putting it in an LLC, even doing a 1031 exchange first. This is where the exclusion quietly falls apart. So let's break down real-world scenarios that most people get wrong. Okay, first, moving out before you hit 2 years. We know that Section 121 has the use test. Okay, you have to use the home as your principal residence for at least 2 years during the 5-year period before you sell. If you move out before you hit the 2-year mark, you've broken the use test, and by default, you don't qualify for the full exclusion. Except when you can still qualify. Okay, there is a partial exclusion if you're moving out because of a change of employment, health reasons, or unforeseen circumstances, things like divorce, disasters, or other significant life events. In those cases, you can prorate the exclusion based on how long you actually lived there. You'll pay capital gains tax on the portion of the gain that doesn't qualify under the shortened use period. For example, say that you're single and you move into a home planning to stay at least 2 years, but after 1 year, your employer transfers you across the country and you have to sell. Okay, you've only used the home for 12 out of the required 24 months. That's half the normal use period. And in that case, you can claim half the $250,000 exclusion, which is $125,000. If you sell the house and you have a $150,000 gain, you could exclude $125,000 and pay capital gains tax on the remaining $25,000. So the idea is you don't get the full exclusion if you don't make it to 2 years, but if you're forced to sell for one of these qualifying reasons, you don't lose the benefit entirely, okay? You get a scaled down version based on how long you actually live there. Second real life scenario, okay? When your home was also a rental, before or after you used it as your principal residence, okay? 2 situations that look the same on the surface, right? It was a rental at one point and it was my home at another point, but the law treats them very differently. Here's why this is the case and how it works. If you use the property as something other than your principal residence before you moved in, for example, a vacation home or rental, the IRS calls that non-qualified use. Okay, they don't let you exclude the portion of the gain tied to that earlier non-residence period. For example, you buy a beach house in 2020, you use it as a vacation home for 4 years, 2020 to 2024, then you move in and live there as your principal residence for 4 years, 2024 to 2028. In 2028, you sell and have a $500,000 gain. You owned it for 8 years total. Only half that time was non-qualified use. The IRS allocates half your gain to that non-qualified period. So even if you're married and technically qualify for up to $500,000 exclusion, in this fact pattern, you only get $250,000 of gain that counts as qualified for the gain exclusion in the first place. The rest is just taxable because it's tied to years the property was a rental or vacation home. Now flip it, okay? You live in the home first, then you rent it out before selling. This is one of those big exceptions in the code. Normally, time when your property isn't your principal residence would chip away at your exclusion, okay? But Congress decided this particular sequence, home first, rental later, should be treated more generously. The idea is that you genuinely bought the property to live in it, not to game the system, so they preserve the home sale benefit even if you rent it out for a bit afterwards, as long as you still sell in time to have lived in it for 2 out of the last 5 years. So let's revisit the same example. You buy a beach house in 2020, and this time you live in it as your principal residence for 2 years, then rent it out for 3 years. When you eventually sell and have a $500,000 gain, you've still lived there at least 2 out of the last 5 years. So if you're married filing joint, you can qualify for the full $500,000 exclusion. The only part that isn't sheltered is any depreciation you claimed while it was a rental. That portion is still taxed as depreciation recapture, even though the rest of the gain can be tax-free under Section 121. Third scenario, putting your home into an LLC. You can have a big problem, okay? Section 121 is written for individual taxpayers. Even though tax law usually tries to match the result to the underlying economics, the fact still matters that you no longer own the home. The entity does. And remember, the person claiming the exclusion has to both own and use the property as a principal residence for 2 of the last 5 years. If your home is owned by anything other than an individual, you may have taken it out of a form that qualifies for the exclusion. By default, multi-member LLCs, partnerships, and non-grantor trusts are separate taxpayers, okay? And the IRS interprets Section 121 as not applying when the residence was held in those kinds of entities instead of by an individual seller. There are 2 key exceptions. If the home is held in a grantor trust or a single-member LLC that is disregarded for federal income tax purposes, the law looks through the entity and still treats you as the owner, and in those cases, the exclusion can still apply if you meet other requirements. Fourth scenario, okay? When the home came from a 1031 tax-free exchange. Okay, a 1031 exchange defers tax on an investment property, but Congress didn't want people stacking a 1031 deferral with a tax-free Section 121 exit. So here's the rule. If you acquired the home through a 1031 exchange, you cannot use the home sale exclusion if you sell it within 5 years of the exchange. For example, you exchange into a property in year 1 via 1031, right? In year 2, you move in and you start using it as your principal residence. You live there for a full 2 years, right? Year 2 and year 3. In year 4, you sell and you try to claim the exclusion. You might think, I owned it for more than 2 years. I lived in it for 2 years, so I qualify. But the tax law says no, you're still within the 5-year disqualification window from the 1031, so Section 121 simply does not apply. The gain is taxable subject to whatever basis and deferred gain carried over from the exchange. To use Section 121 on a former 1031 property, you need both: to have held the property for at least 5 years after the exchange and to meet the normal 2 out of 5 year ownership and use test within that period. Only then does the home become eligible for the primary residence exclusion again. So we've covered the situations where most people accidentally lose the exclusion. Now let's talk about the one strategy almost no one realizes even exists. It's legal, it is very niche, and when it works, it can lock in tax-free gains before you ever turn your home into a rental. This is a strategy most people never think about: selling your home to a relative before you fall outside the 2 out of 5 year window. Okay, here's the idea. If your former personal residence has a large built-in gain and is now being rented, you may still be able to execute a real bona fide sale, even to a related party, and claim the Section 121 home sale exclusion before it expires once you're out the exclusion window. But this only works if the transaction qualifies as an actual sale under tax law, not a paper shuffle, and it comes with very specific conditions and long-term consequences. Under Section 267, special anti-abuse rules apply when you sell property to a related party. Right? Losses on those sales are generally disallowed, even if the sales price is fair. And related party is defined broadly, right? Your spouse, parents, children, grandchildren, siblings, grandparents, and entities you control. but not cousins or in-laws. And even if you pick someone who qualifies, the IRS can throughout the entire transaction if the sale doesn't have real economic substance, right? That includes situations where you stay in the home, you sell below fair market value, you quietly keep control, or the payments only exist on paper. If any of that's true, the IRS can simply recharacterize the deal and say a real sale never happened. So what does a real sale look like? The sale has to have real substance, right? You sell at a defensible price. You sign a real contract, a new deed is recorded, money truly changes hands, and you move out while the buyer takes genuine ownership and risk. Even when done correctly, this is not for everyone, right? You may trigger a taxable gain above the $250,000 or $500,000 exclusion amount. You give up real economic control, not paper control, actual control, right? The buyer may face a property tax reassessment at full market value. This is a niche planning tool, not a tax trick, and it only works when all the economics, paperwork, and intent line up. But when used correctly, it can preserve a tax-free gain that would otherwise disappear once you convert the home to rental use. And if you're tired of tax law being hidden behind very expensive paywalls and think it should be easier for you to understand tax law, stay within the law, and also tax plan to keep more of what you earn, then subscribe, because it tells me you want more in-depth videos like this.